Welcome, Vault Dwellers. My name is Nacho Bidness, and today we are going to wrap up our series on things that I think Fallout 76 got right. Now, I started every one of these videos saying that I think that Fallout 76 is a deeply flawed game, and it is my least favorite of the Bethesda Fallout games. That said, with all the negativity that has surrounded this game, I think it's easy to miss some of the things that they got right. And these are things that I think that as a community, we should be asking for Bethesda for more of this when it comes to their next and hopefully better Fallout game. So the last thing that we're going to talk about in this series is what I call found stories. And some people might call this environmental storytelling, some people might call it lore, but whatever you call it, it's something that Bethesda has gotten very good at when it comes to telling a story that is individual and personal and doesn't have any bearing on the rest of the game, and yet is still interesting and fun to find and read and think about. And they kind of come in three different lengths or varieties. The first is something that is completely implied. There's no notes or anything. It's just a matter of, if we look at this carefully, what do we see? Well, we're up on the top of the West Tech Research Building, which is occupied by super mutants, and there's a tent and a sleeping bag, cooking station, some food, a bicycle, and a corpse holding a beer bottle. I think the implication here is that this person was trapped on the roof after the bombs dropped. They came up here to hide out, and then the super mutants came along and they were just stuck up here and eventually died of dehydration, because drinking nothing but beer is a definite way to die of dehydration. But what else do we have going on here? There's some other clues laying around. And the first is that there's some paint and a painting. And if you look around a little bit more, what you'll find is there's a whole bunch of paint cans down here, along with some canvases and some paintings. And if you carefully navigate this ledge and come up here, what you'll find is a lawn chair. There was more paint here, but I picked it up and then lost the video footage, so I have to re-record. But there was more paint here, some binoculars, a ham radio, and another painting. And I think the implication here is that this person was holding out hope that they were going to somehow find a way off of this rooftop and past the super mutants. I mean, it is unlikely, I think, for someone to continue creating art and painting when there is absolutely no hope that they will ever leave or get to share that art with somebody else. So they came up here while the super mutants were prowling down below and had this magnificent view of the cranberry bog. Like, you can see Robco kind of over there, and if you scoot to the edge of the roof over here, you can see Watoga off in the distance over there. And so they just came up here and painted and hoped to find an opportunity. And it is kind of heartbreaking that that opportunity never came for this person. One last note, there is perfectly preserved pie up here, so if you have been looking for some perfectly preserved pie to add to your collection, you can definitely get a guaranteed drop up here. So that's one of the kind of short and implied stories, and I like this kind of thing because it allows us as a player to think a little bit and kind of fill in the details. But there's some other story types, and I want to discuss those. So let's jump ahead a little bit to the next one that I've got planned here. So the second one of these found stories that I wanted to talk about, one of my favorites, is one of these kind of middle length found stories where we get a little bit more than just some environmental cues. We get a holotape or a note. This is in particular one of my favorites. It's located here at the East Mountain Lookout, which is just to the east of the West Tech Research Center that we were just at. And as we climb this lookout tower, what we find are all of these pots and potted plants and growing things, and it seems clear that someone has been gardening here on these elevated levels sometime after the bombs dropped. And if we get all the way to the top, what we find is a cozy little home with, sadly, a couple of corpses. But these are fairly recent deaths. They must be post-war. After all, they have not completely rotted away into skeletons. And even around the outside of the top of the tower, we find even more of these flower boxes and planters and such, as well as a duffel bag with nothing good in it. But what really kind of gets me with this is when we look over here and look at the note on the table here. And it says, "Dear Sandy, today I woke up and you were gone. Somehow I know I won't be far behind. These past 4 years have been the happiest of my life. The world's gone crazy down below, but up here our crops are thriving. Your flowers are still blooming. Some days I think I can even forget. I will see you soon, my love, Gerald." I mean, doesn't that just tug at your heartstrings? Clearly this was actually, so that's interesting. The last time I came here, there was a cane right there, and these glasses. So what that implied to me was that this was an elderly couple, but an elderly couple that had found love late in life, because his letter mentions these last 4 years, and since it's been 25 years since the war, these folks met after the world had ended and fell in love. And that is just so bittersweet that something, whether it was radiation or sickness or malnutrition or something, but something, maybe even the scorch plague, although there's no real symptoms, but something got them. And that is a shame. But I read these kind of things and they are so melancholy, and they just fit the mood of Fallout so well. And I think that these are, more of this kind of thing is something that I hope for in the next game. Not that this game lacked it. This game was just chock full of these kinds of very, mid-length found stories. So let's take a look at this nice view of the cranberry bog as the sun comes up over the radioactive cloud across the way, and we're going to move on to the next one. The last found story that I wanted to talk about is an example of what I would call a longer form story, in that it unfolds over the course of an entire dungeon. It's not a quest or anything, it's just something that you can find if you're paying attention while you play the game. We're here in Kerwood Mine, which is actually just down the hill from the lookout and just down the hill from West Tech Research. I think it's kind of interesting that we can find 3 good stories all right together like this. And it looks like someone else may be joining me soon. We'll see if they're friendly. At any rate, as you progress through this dungeon, you find a number of notes talking about underground explosions and a whole lot of ghouls. And the communications between these different notes and holotapes and stuff are all very angry and accusatory, saying, this person's at fault, that person's at fault. But it's really not until we get to the very end of the dungeon that we find what I think is something that just is going to make your skin crawl. Because the dungeon itself is flooded, which means that you're running around or very, very slowly walking around in power armor at the bottom of these watery tunnels and desperately hoping that you don't get lost in the murk, trying to make sure that you stay topped up on Rad-X to stay alive. And eventually, if you're very lucky and can pay attention and make a good map and not get lost, you eventually find your way up through the back door here. See, that entrance that I walked through is actually locked until you find a key down in the dungeon. It's very much designed like a Skyrim dungeon. It's a large loop. And if you go inside this security gate, you can come to this terminal. And I've already hacked this, but the story that really unfolds after all the hints and everything that you get throughout the mine is just bone-chilling. The first entry here describes the fact that the guy has got a job at this mine, but things are not going well. The second paragraph says, I heard rumors that AMS wants to detonate a chain of nuclear blasts in the local mine system to speed up production. What a horrible idea, but nobody gives a damn what I have to say. I need a drink. The second log says, another horrible crisis narrowly averted, no thanks to our local idiot fire boss. I tried to get him canned today, but the powers that be informed me that Roy Kerwood is untouchable. I'll give you two guesses why. Of course, this being Kerwood Mine, I think we can understand that Roy Kerwood is somebody's son. The kid thinks he runs shit around here. This month he started blatantly taking cash from the safe. I had to lock it up so tight the Silver Shroud wouldn't be able to get in. I'm thankful to have a job in this economy, but let's face it, I'm not getting any younger. Some days I can't shake the feeling that I'll live out the last of my days in this place, and that would terrify me if I didn't think of the alternative. The third entry is, it hit the fan over here, and I have better things to do, but they say they want a log entry for insurance purposes. What a crock of shit. As predicted, AMS really screwed us with that chain detonation last week. The whole mine shook. About half the tunnels collapsed along with the main lift shaft. 17 men died immediately, maybe more. Haven't recovered all the bodies yet. It knocked out the dewatering system and breached into a nearby mine, completely flooding the lower network. The water is irradiated from the detonation, so swimming through it for a rescue operation is off the table. 32 men are trapped down there. The structure engineer has no clue what to do. We broke a hole through the locker room into an old shaft. That's flooded too. Don't know what to do next, but we better come up with something fast. There's my log. I hope they know where they can stick it. 32 men trapped in a flooded mine that is highly irradiated. And that mine, when we come along it 25 years later, is full of ghouls. So I think we can infer what happened there, can't we? The last entry, recorded November 6, 2077. The world is over. The trapped miners are dead. Hell, everybody's dead. It's cold outside. The bombs hit last month and I have nowhere to go. I have 7 boxes of food, a gun with 2 bullets, and a bottle of whiskey. In the end, I'll use all of them. Probably not in that order, though. I don't even know why I'm writing this. Bored, I guess. The generators are holding for now. but I hear all kinds of noises from the flooded part of the mine. I know it's impossible, but it sounds like screams. Horrified screams that haunt my nightmares. If anybody ever reads this, I hope the world isn't as fucked as it seems. If it is, I feel sorry for you. So this man ended his days in the mine, which he said would terrify him to live out the last of his days here. And if you look around just a little bit, what should you find but a skeleton with it's a vodka bottle instead of a bottle of whiskey, darn it, but he's got a 10mm pistol. It just, oh man, to think that I might, or imagine ending the world at work and not being able to leave work ever again and spending the last of your days in your office and eventually committing suicide because there's nowhere to go and it's too irradiated outside to leave. I don't know about you, but that sends chills down my spine. And it's an example, I think, of some of the good writing that is done in these games. And I will say that I don't think that the main storyline here was particularly great. As far as the whole quest line with the overseer, I was really disappointed that there was kind of no final payoff in finding the overseer's corpse, or even potentially meeting the overseer as a surprise NPC or anything like that. So the main quest writing was disappointing, but these kind of little environmental beats, this is what keeps me coming back to Fallout. It's stuff like this, and I hope that they continue to do that in future Fallout games. So if you are still watching, if there's something that I missed that you think that Fallout 76 did really well, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button down below. If you didn't like, please tell me why so I can do better next time. And as far as next time goes, I've got more content planned, so be sure and subscribe. Until next time, my name is Nacho Bidness, and I'm saying it's a great big wasteland out there. Let's go have fun in it.